What's your name?
Thomas Franklin Byrd.
And how old are you?
100 years and 1 week old.
100 years and 1 week old. Okay. Now tell me about this area here and how long you've been here and what you did and everything.
This birdland was entered by John Steele. He came here from England with the English military to fight the Pilgrims in the year of 1776. And when John Steele got to America, he landed in what was the end of the P.D. River, which runs in 4 miles of my house, and it's 200 miles down the river to where the Pilgrims landed. And that's where John Steele was ordered to walk when he got off the boat east to the Outer Banks of North Carolina till he met the English military and joined the military to fight the Pilgrims. As soon as John Steele got off the boat, he heard talk and laughter in the air, and he stopped and listened. And it was the English military coming from the Outer Banks, headed home. And they saw John Steele, and they said, "Come on, soldiers, the war is over. We're going back to England home. Come on, let's go home." And he told them, "I'm not going back home. I brought my surveying equipment, and when I was in school, a boy, my school teachers would argue about what will happen if England gives the Pilgrims their freedom. And they'd all say they'd have to find responsible Pilgrims that would find land that they wanted to claim, and they'd have to pay a small tax on it to start the new government." All this information was given to me by my grandpa Walter Mosley Byrd, the grandson of John Steele I'm talking about. That's how I got the word.
Yes, sir.
And John Steele's surveying kit, whenever he died, he had his surveying kit willed to Eliza Jane Steele, his daughter. It was the mama of my grandpa Byrd. And when I was growing up, my grandpa Byrd died, and he willed that surveying kit to my oldest brother Walter Byrd whenever he was 2 years old. And my daddy bought that surveying kit to the 185 acres of Steele land that John Steele had gave his daughter Eliza Jane. I got that information from my great-grandma Eliza Jane Steele, and my grandpa told me what I've just told. 200 years later, in 1976, the President of the United States, over radio, addressing the nation, he wanted all of the American people to come to Washington, D.C. and visit and see the good things the American Pilgrims have accomplished. And they had a 30-day vacation for that visit to Washington, D.C. And they had built up this nation from up to the Canadian border and the foothills of Canada. I've traveled all those places in my life.
Now, how long was you in logging?
How long was I what?
Was you in, how long was you in the logging business?
6 to 7 years straight, and then I turned it over to my son, his brother, and he's still there.
And now you rode a horse until you was how old?
88.
I started logging when I was 9 years old with my daddy.
Okay, but you rode a horse.
I started riding horses whenever I was a 5-year-old.
And then you
I
rode
rode till I was 88 years old.
88 years old. That's phenomenal.
And I rode the fastest horses known.
The fastest horses.
And I have rode around the state park of Marble Mountain in Stanley County, the highest mountains known anywhere. And riding fast horses around a long horse trail, it takes 11 hours to ride around it. And my horse would always make the round an hour quicker than any other at the 26 Horseman Association riders.
Well, my horse would be in trouble because I got a quarter horse, and she's slower than snails.
Look, I had the first quarter horse anybody knows, and the quarter horse it was a Mustang, a Montana, swamp raised Mustang, a blue-blooded horse. He had blue hair.
Oh my gracious!
And he was cattle broke. I worked cattle. I got cattle roping and catching equipment in my barn now, and saddles that I use.
My gracious!
I use heavy Western saddles, and I rode that horse till he got old. And then I grew several quarter horses. That was prize winners, roping horses. I rode them cattle horses till I was about 60 years old. Then I went to riding saddlebreds that was fast and rode smooth. You sat on the riding fast and be just as smooth as sitting here in this chair.
Now you used to ride the fence lines with your horse too, didn't you?
Yeah. And that's what I checked the fence lines with. And if the cows got out in the woods, I could take that saddlebred horse after I showed him one time how to put cattle in. He could put them in without me showing him.
My gracious.
And there's something, a lot of folks ride horses. Very few folks know how to ride a horse. Whenever you see, like in the movies, quarter horses running and trying to catch a thief and be running hard as they can go, you never see one stumble, do you?
No, sir.
Well, you know how come?
Why is that?
That horse keeps himself in balance. And a rider has to learn to stay in balance with his horse.
That makes sense.
And that way you can ride it and never use a rein. Lean to the left, he'll stay under you. If you want to turn to the right, lean to the right a little, he'll stay under you. You'll turn to the right. And if you just keep leaning hard to the right, you turn around and around. And if you want to jump on the horse and go straight forward, quick as you can, you jump in that saddle and you lean forward, and that horse will stay under you. You'll take over just wide open. And I have stopped my quarter horse many a time. I want to stop him quick. I want to stop him quick, I'd lean back right quick. And he'd drag his back feet, come up by his front, and he'd stop a lot of times sitting down, and I'd just take my foot and put it on the ground. Very few folks know how to ride a horse.
Well, I'm going to stop right here. Because I know you know, Karen, I want to tell you something. This gentleman here, I love him to death. and I've missed seeing him. And he can tell you stuff about things. His memory's phenomenal.
A lot of family history.
You know,
It's interesting.
But anyway, that's why I wanted to stop here.
I love history.
You know, and Frank, I want to tell you, I love you, and I appreciate you. Now, I appreciate you telling me all about my grandma, Janie Byrd, and you know, the times that I visit with you and Frankie down here, it's been a real blessing. But anyway, this is Happy Trails, Cowboy Odie, McCarran, and Frank Bryd and Frankie Byrd. Now he's the farmer and Jimmy's the logger. But anyway,
let me tell you something else.
okay.
Ask if you know about it. Now, you know, whenever we used to go over to Grandpa's place, when Uncle Bud got married, Grandpa was living right where the bird reunion used to be every year. And about all of the birds we go west to the bird reunion, and Uncle Bud, well, many folks knew Uncle Bud's name. His name was Nathan.
Nathan.
Yeah. And Nathan Byrd and his family lived together and made a living on the land. And they always had plenty of timber to sell. And they never would hire and pay out any money. Every time they got $1, they'd keep it. And a lot of folks would, in the Byrd family, they used to go to the Byrd reunion every year. They thought that's where all the birds came from over there. But I would correct them. All the birds came from, you see a lighthouse right over here?
Yes, sir.
Now, that's where all the birds started from, right there.
Right there.
When John Steele gave them this 185 acres of land here, he gave it to his oldest daughter, Liza Jane Steele, buried right over here in the edge of the same land that John Steele entered and gave to her. And she was married to Reverend Nathan Byrd, the Methodist preacher. That's who she's married to. And John Steele, when she married Nathan Byrd, John Steele gave him and her a deed for this 185 acres of land. And they were living at that time 3 miles below Beacon over here, 7 miles from here, on Chiefs Creek. And that's where John Steele stopped in on land. And he built a big house up there, a log house on top of a long slope. And the last time I passed that 3 years ago, there was 2 rooms of that log house still standing over there.
How gracious.
And that was built in the year about 14.
No, 18.
No.
18.
Like 1800. And the part of that house still standing there.